Shotgun with Charlie.
Riding shotgun refers to the practice of sitting next to the driver in a moving vehicle. The term riding shotgun came around after the time of the stagecoach, when somebody used to sit next to the driver holding a shotgun, in case they ran into bandits. My name is Charlie Cook, and I drive a lot. I like to talk to people while I'm driving, so I interview people in my car while I'm driving. Welcome to Riding Shotgun with Charlie. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Today I have with me author and instructor Mark Shean. Mark, thanks for being on the show.
How you doing?
I am living the dream, man. Living the dream. All right, let's go for a ride. Let's talk with you.
All right.
So you put out a book recently, which is how I found out about you. And your book is about, grab the book. Let people see it.
I put this book out. It's about, it says Massachusetts Gun Law, Information, and Common Sense Firearm Safety. It's not, though, don't let the title fool you. It's not just about Massachusetts gun law. It also has many aspects of firearm safety. Some things you might not even know that you didn't know about firearm safety. So it's not just regulated to Massachusetts gun owners only, even though it is very informative for Massachusetts gun owners, since the laws in Massachusetts are very, let's say, archaic.
I wish they were old enough to say they were constitutional laws, but that is not the case here in Massachusetts. The laws change, I don't want to say frequently, but obviously we found out in 2016 the laws can change when an attorney general wakes up and...
Yes. Well, prior to 2016, when she made that leap, 2014 was the last time the laws had changed. Prior to that, it was 2098.
1998.
I'm sorry, 1998.
That's
there
all
we go. 2098. Yeah, in the future.
In the future. Oof.
And so they don't change that often. I don't think I'll have to make regular updates on a yearly basis. They don't change that fast. But I believe Maura Healey will lose in her attempt to make the change she has made once it's gone through all the legal proceedings it has to go through.
All right, so this is relatively new to when we're filming this, but a couple weeks ago, the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, they didn't get, I don't want to say they got shut down, but they're not going to have their case heard at the Supreme Court. Because the city of New York said it's okay if people take a gun outside of New York State. Then Maura Healey came out and said that she doesn't want to pursue her case at the Supreme Court to have her decision made.
Well, she's trying to keep it from going there, but I don't believe that she'll be able to. I think it's going to end up in the Supreme Court. Time will tell, but I believe it's going to go all the way, because they have shown numerous examples of how she has violated protocol, Constitution, and people's rights. So I believe they're going to push it, make it go to the Supreme Court, make the Supreme Court make a decision.
That would be great.
So I think she knows that's coming. She's trying to avoid it at all costs.
Yeah, that's the way I took it. The way I took it was she wanted to take it. They didn't do anything with New York, and so she's like, oh, well, hey, you know what? You don't have to see it. We're okay. Everything will be fine here.
No, I don't think so. And what bothers me about the Constitution in general, as far as our gun rights, is that, we live in the United States of America. We don't live in only Massachusetts or only Rhode Island or only Connecticut. Our citizenship doesn't stop at the border of the state that we live in. We're American citizens. Our gun rights go from sea to shining sea, not just the border of Massachusetts. And just because Connecticut doesn't accept our gun license, we can get in trouble in Connecticut for having a lawfully owned firearm with a gun license. And you shouldn't get in trouble in any state as a law-abiding citizen with a lawfully owned gun license and a lawfully owned gun under the Constitution of the United States. I pay federal taxes, I pay state taxes, I should be able to go anywhere I want to go without harassment from law enforcement playing to their political handlers in this state or that state. Well, that's why I like sheriffs so much. Sheriffs are elected to their positions. They're not appointed by some political hack like a lot of police chiefs are. But there are a lot of good police chiefs out there. But Plymouth, where I'm from, excellent police chief. He's very fair, reasonable guy, but there are a lot of them that are not reasonable. They play games. They invent law, which isn't their job. It's the legislature's law to invent it, not the police.
Yeah.
And they pretend that they're whatever thing they've invented is law, which it isn't. But back to having a firearms license in the United States, you should be able to go anywhere you want to go, do whatever you want to do in this country without harassment. And sheriffs being elected know that it's important to follow the Constitution and not to break their oath to uphold the Constitution. Whereas there are many oath-breaking politicians that don't feel the same way, obviously.
Right, it seems like a lot of them are.
And what kills me about politicians that break their oath to office is they didn't run. That wasn't their platform when they ran for their office. They didn't get in front of their constituents and say, you know what, constituents, when I get into office, I'm going to make sure I tear down your Constitution. I'm gonna cherry pick whatever it is I don't like, and I'm gonna go after it. No, when they say their oath to office, they swear to uphold the entire Constitution, not just cherry pick what they want.
It's not an a la carte menu.
No, they've never got up in front of anybody and said, when I get elected, I'm going to take away your rights. They don't run on that platform because they wouldn't get elected. But they seem to think once they're in, they can do just that.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Where sheriffs, they uphold the Constitution. They know they have to be elected again. They want to uphold law. The sheriff in Virginia just did something very, very interesting. Have you heard what he did down there?
Yes, well, they decided to have sanctuary, Second Amendment sanctuary states.
Isn't that amazing?
Cities.
Sanctuary, Second Amendment. If I put up a map of the United States, I would say, there's my sanctuary, the United States.
Right.
Under the Constitution.
This is what I like about that. I like that, and I try not to, be Democrat, Republican here, but we have the pro-freedom folks and the anti-freedom folks. The anti-freedom folks do want to give illegal aliens rights, so they call it a sanctuary town or a sanctuary state.
Right.
But when I like that the pro-freedom folks are saying, hey, listen, we're going to use the same terminology. We're going to say that if you have these guns, it's not illegal for you to have them. It's not illegal for you to have it on Monday, but when Thursday rolls around, now it's illegal, and now you're going to get in a heap of trouble for that, which is complete baloney.
These sanctuary cities for illegal aliens and all the officials in these sanctuary cities, the officials that swore to uphold the Constitution, every single one of these officials should be arrested as traitors to their oath. When an illegal alien commits a crime in their city that they have decided they're going to make a sanctuary, they should sit in jail with that illegal alien because they aided and abetted that crime. They allowed that crime to happen with people who are not legally in this country. I believe officials should be held accountable, should sit in jail for the same period of time that the criminal gets for the crime he committed. You start doing that to a few of these oath-breaking politicians, you watch the rest of the country turn around real quick.
Trying to shape up a little bit. Yeah,
real quick.
Absolutely.
It really irritates me.
Listen,
if you can't tell.
We got you. We got a strong beginning to this show. Let's talk about you and how you got into gun ownership. You've been shooting for a long time. I think you said you were 7 when you started shooting,
Yep.
7 or 8?
Yep, 7. I started shooting in the organized shooting sports at Dow Air Force, Maine when I was 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
My sister started, she's a couple of years older than me. She started at 7 also, Dow Air Force Base. My stepfather was a master sergeant in the Air Force. At the time, there was a strategic air command up there, during the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the big B-52 bombers up there and all that stuff. Well, they would take you at 7 as long as you didn't want to shoot holes in the ceiling. You wanted to pay attention. And I always loved shooting. I shot prior to joining that NRA Junior Rifle Team. I have a book at home. It's an NRA Junior Rifle Team book. And my picture's in the book. They came to Dow Air Force Base, Maine. They took a picture of our team, or our group, and we're all prone, we're all shooting, or in the pose of shooting anyway.
Right.
And the one thing that strikes me in that picture is not one kid has safety glasses on, not one kid has ear protection. My ears ring to this day. I've done a lot of shooting without that ear protection, and I have ringing ears, and I attribute it to that.
Sure, once you get tinnitus, it doesn't go away. It only gets worse.
Yeah,
it's interesting how things used to. I don't want to say it was acceptable, but we didn't wear safety glasses and ear protection. Yeah, and I'll say this: I've been late to the game in watching John Wayne movies, right? Like
really?
I hate to admit that I didn't grow up watching John Wayne, but I got into, it took me a long time to finally make it all the way through The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, and then when I made it to the end, I was stoked. Oh my God, it was so great, so great. So after watching some Clint Eastwood and the Good, the Bad, the Ugly trilogy, and some other Clint Eastwood westerns, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch some John Wayne westerns. And you watch the John Wayne westerns, and they might have been a little bit slower, but John Wayne runs around all the time with his finger on the trigger. And I'm like, oh.
He's ready to go.
Right? How can they do this?
I met Eli Wallach at the airport.
You did?
Yeah, a few years ago. I met Eli Wallach.
That's too cool.
He was in a wheelchair. He was the one that played the ugly in The Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
Right.
And he was in a wheelchair. He was like 90-something years old.
Oh my gosh.
And I got to talk to him in a little area where he was sitting in. And he was a character. He was quite a nice guy. And I said, so what brings you up to Boston? And he says, well, I'm here to promote a book. Now here he is. He's in his 90s. He's up here promoting his book. And so I said, what's the name of your book? And he says, The Good, the Bad, and Me.
Oh my God!
That's a book. You can find that book, The Good, the Bad, and Me.
Oh my God!
By Eli Wallach. And he was. I talked to him for maybe 15 minutes. He was a great guy.
Oh, that's very cool.
Very, very personable guy. And so I got to meet one of my Western stars.
Heroes. That's too cool. That is too cool.
Yeah, he was fun.
All right, so let's fast forward a little bit. So you spent some time learning how to shoot. You got the NRA stuff when you were a kid. How do you get to the point? Like you've been an instructor for quite a while.
Yeah.
But you also said you did law enforcement training.
Yeah, law enforcement firearms, NRA law enforcement firearms instructor in patrol, rifle, and handgun. And I work at a nuclear power plant. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the nuclear security officers there, if they're going to go through training, they can't go through training with a civilian NRA instructor. Okay. It has to be a law enforcement instructor or a law enforcement credentialed instructor. Mm-hmm. So I had to take a week-long class in the patrol rifle down in Maryland, and the other one was in New Jersey for the handgun, a week for each one of them. And if you are involved in the nuclear organization, like under the NRC, like I was, at a nuclear power plant, you were considered Homeland Security and you could actually train with the police.
Oh, wow.
You just can't go train with the police unless you had something to do with Homeland Security.
Gotcha.
So I went there and I took both those classes and got my qualifications to train the nuclear security officers with the law enforcement credentials. And I had done that with the idea that I was going to train and get into the training department, and which never ended up turning out happening. But I had the credentials.
Yeah.
And I could have gone to police stations with those credentials if they needed a trainer.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
And instructed police officers. But it just didn't turn out that way. It just didn't happen.
Yeah.
But I have 6 other disciplines in the NRA under the civilian end of it. I have home defense, personal defense, black powder, rifle, pistol, and shotgun certifications. The reason I got into it in the first place, in 1998, my son wanted to get his FID card in Massachusetts, and at that time the FID class and the licensed carry class were 2 separate entities, and you had to be 21 for the license to carry, and he was only 15. He wanted his FID, which is rifles and shotguns only.
Right.
And I couldn't find any instructors that did it. I could not find any of them. And the ones I was talking to, well, one comment was made one time, well, there was more money in the license to carry, I was told. And that just kind of upset me, got me a little angry, because you know what? You're leaving the children behind, you're leaving the youth behind because you're fixated on more money.
Right. How are we supposed to pass this on to the next generation if we don't take them out shooting?
I told more than one of these guys, when you dinosaurs are extinct, you've just allowed the shooting sports to go extinct with you.
Right.
So what I did was I went and I got my certifications through the state police, and I started doing the classes for kids only. I did my son first. He was my first victim.
Nice.
And then I started doing all his friends for their FIDs and all their friends, and I just got into it for them. And then, lo and behold, the class merged, so it didn't matter. You could have 15-year-olds in the class and 25-year-olds and up in the class. Didn't matter. It was the same class.
Same class, right.
So I've just been doing it ever since. I'm almost at 900 classes now.
That's awesome.
I've given it to over 4,000 people, and I'm pretty well known. I've gone to over 87 different towns in Massachusetts giving the class. Like cool. You have a niche doing this with your show, where you drive around, which I thought was cool. I have a niche because when I first started doing this class, I started going to people's homes on their schedule, and nobody was doing that.
Yeah. And
then other people would say, well, how do you have them shoot? I said, well, I don't have them shoot because that's not mandated by the state. The state does not mandate a shooting class. What the state wants them to know, if you have a gun license in your possession, you're required and expected to know what the firearms laws of the state are.
Right.
And the shooting comes after. If you go get your license and you decide that you want to come back to me with a firearm to get familiar with that firearm that you bought, not that somebody had you shoot at a range that you'll never own.
Right. I
said, you come back to me with it, and I will give you a familiarization class with that firearm so you're not uncomfortable with that firearm.
I think that's a really good idea because I always tell people, I say, look, I've got 4 semi-autos that I use in classes that I show loading and unloading with. And I said they all come apart in different ways. So there's no sense in showing you how to take this gun apart if you're not going to end up with one of these. And if there's anything you should forget, you can, I don't want to say you can forget how to take the gun apart, but you can find out how to do that later.
You can do it later. You can do it with the gun you bought, and I'll show you how to take it apart and put it together. So you know your gun, not somebody else's gun, like you just said.
Yeah.
Well, and the main reason I don't have them shoot, it's selfish, okay? It's for my own safety. I don't know who these these people are that come to my class.
Right.
I have no clue what their motive might be. The police have not vetted them. They have not gone through a background check.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I put a gun in their hands not knowing what their real motivation is? And people have done bad things. And
Sure.
I have examples and links to those bad things on my site. But you know what? Let the police do their job, do their background checks, come back to me. Now I know you're a good guy.
Right.
Okay, how do I know that you wouldn't just take the gun and shoot me and take everything I own and take off? How would I know that?
You wouldn't know
Well,
that.
Chris Kyle didn't know it either, but that's what happened to him. And the
Right.
person that did it was a felon.
Mm-hmm.
And if he had known that, which he didn't because Chris Kyle didn't do background checks,
Yeah.
he wouldn't have allowed this guy to have guns in the first place.
It would have been legal for him to shoot.
He'd be alive today.
Absolutely.
And I've been saying this a lot longer and a lot further back than before Chris Kyle. I just wish he had thought that way and he'd still be with us,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
I know he did try to do the right thing. He was an excellent guy, and unfortunately, they got him killed. So one mistake is your last one. You know,
Unfortunately, yeah. Unfortunately.
when it comes to firearms.
All right. So, being an instructor, how do you get to the point where let's talk about your book? How do you get to the point where you decide you want to start to write a book? Because I read the book and there's a lot of questions that you answer, and there's a lot of cross-referencing and hey, go check this out and look at this one and I already answered that one over here and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So was it like I'm reading the book and I'm like, all right, was this some sort of was it like a blog post that he had and he just expanded, like took all these blog posts and turned it into a book?
Oh, my website, I opened a website in 2010 when somebody who took my class approached me and he said, you know what, you have an awful lot of information. Have you ever thought about putting it on a website?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, but I'm not sure how to do that. And he says, well, I do that stuff. His name is Steve, and he builds websites. He says, I'd be more than glad to help you do that. So he did, and we call it massfirearmsafety.com. And I was surprised I got that name from my website because, you know, massfirearmsafety.com in Massachusetts, I thought it would have been
Thought it would have been taken.
Right?
Absolutely.
But it wasn't, so I
Absolutely.
took it. And so he helped me, and I had started writing my Gun Sense series probably in around 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And so they weren't in any specific order. They were just as I was thinking of things and how I should write things out for my students to understand about the gun laws and safety and all that. So when he helped me build the website, I started putting them into the website, and I called it Gun Sense. And that's why I called my book Gun Sense. Even though Bloomberg has tried to steal the term, I was writing Gun Sense before Bloomberg came up with that term.
Right. Well, let's face it. What Bloomberg is pushing for is not gun sense.
No.
It's not even common sense. All right, we're gonna make a U-turn right here.
Yep. And so are you still plugged into the GPS as far as how to get back to? Or do you know how to get back? We lost?
We are not lost. We are not lost. Contrary to what my good friend Amanda thinks, I do not intend to get lost with people. We went down one road to the end and turned.
Because I have no idea where I am right now.
This is what I you know what, I've interviewed people all over the country, and a number of times I'm like, all right, do you know where you're going? They're like, nope. I'm like, me neither. Here's the GPS. Here's where we're starting. We're going to drive for about 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes, and then we're going to turn around and go back. Yeah, and it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, but we're not. We're halfway through, which is cool.
I believe.
And
I believe now I have 52 series or 52 articles in Gun Sense.
Yeah.
A lot of them pertaining to law. A lot of them pertaining to law that is in the works. A lot of it is firearm safety, and a lot of it is firearm safety that, as I give it to my classes, many people have never heard before. It's not just so much. It's not all cut and dry firearm safety. There is things that people do know
Right.
and have learned, and there are things that they've never heard before that I bring up, and even older people that I've given this class to lawyers, I've given it to retired judges, I've given it to police officers who have come into the state from other states that never heard some of the stuff I tell them.
Some of the stuff, we have in Massachusetts is completely ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. And when I talk to my friends that live, I call it in free America, rather than occupied territory. But when I talk to my friends in free America, they're like, you can't go buy a Kimber? Yeah, no, we can't have that.
Well, you know,
we can't have this particular.
Let me explain that real quick. A lot of people don't realize it, but there's a banned list of certain firearms in Massachusetts. And if you live in Massachusetts, you probably have heard of that. What a lot of people don't understand about this so-called banned list, it is a list of guns that are banned for gun dealers to sell to you as a citizen. They can't have them in their store to sell to you. But let's say somebody moves in from out of state.
From free America.
They come.
I always say this. Let's say you lost a bet and you had to move to Massachusetts, and you have a Kimber. You can bring it as long as you got a license.
You can own it.
Yep, you got it, and you can even transfer it to me, probably at a premium, because I can't get I can't get it from a dealer.
Right, and a lot of people don't realize that. And you can actually go to a dealer with that Kimber, for instance, and you can trade it in for something he's got. Now he can actually take that and trade. And now, even though he can't buy new ones from Kimber, say, hey, Kimber, send me 10 of your Kimbers and I'll sell them. He can't do that. But he can take the Kimber he just took in trade and legally sell it back to somebody who walks into a store as a used firearm. He can legally do that.
Ridiculous.
It is just foolish. And the reason these guns are on these banned lists, it's legal extortion by the politicians in Massachusetts. Here's all Kimber has to do if they want to get off the ban list. They have to give Massachusetts extortionists $500,000 to take their name off the ban list, and they can start selling their gun in Massachusetts. And a lot of companies are not willing to pay the extortion fee. And that is it. It has nothing to do with public safety. It has to do with extortion. And I hope you politicians out there hear it, because we're onto your game.
It's completely ridiculous. Completely ridiculous.
Yes, it is. It has nothing to do with public safety whatsoever.
You'd think if you want everyone to be safe, everyone should learn how to everyone should take a safety course, and to know how to use a gun, to handle a gun, use a gun, keep it locked up, keep it secured, and know how to use a gun and let them carry it.
Sure. Well, here's another foolish piece of paper that just came out that we're supposed to tell people about in our classes. It's an affidavit form. All right, it's an affidavit claiming, not initially when you first sign up for a firearms license, but 6 years later when you have to renew, you need this affidavit form, which they'll probably at some point just incorporate into the application. But right now it's a separate piece of paper. And you have to sign this form stating that no guns were lost or stolen within the last 6 years. Well, that's foolish right in the face of it. If a firearm is lost or stolen, you have to report it as soon as you're aware of it.
Right.
You don't wait 6 years to report it. So why do I need to tell and fill out this paperwork at the end of 6 years to tell them nothing was lost or stolen when I never reported anything lost or stolen?
Right, because you're
in the meantime, anyway, in that 6 year period. So here I'm giving you this form to tell you nothing was lost or stolen, but you already know that because I never filled out a report.
Didn't let you know. Right, because if this is what I find frustrating. If you have a gun that was lost or stolen, you have to let the state know. If you don't let them know in a timely enough manner,
as soon as you know,
right. If you don't tell them soon enough, then they're going to smack you with a fee. So you're the victim of a crime. Let's say someone broke in your house. You're a victim of a crime. You didn't let Massachusetts know your guns were stolen. Bam. I forget what the fee is. It's something ridiculous.
Oh yeah, and
Like,
jail time. And,
right. Okay.
They threaten you. They know where you live, but they don't know where the criminal lives that stole your gun.
Right.
Okay, so another foolish piece of paper that I don't have to give it out, but I do. It's just a courtesy, like the affidavit. I'll give that out as a courtesy in my class. But another one is change of address notification form in Massachusetts. If I live in Plymouth and I move to another street in Plymouth, well, I don't need to fill it out because I'm still in Plymouth, and I can just put my new address on the application the next time I renew. But if I move from Plymouth to another town like Duxbury, for instance, now I have to fill out 3 of these change of notification address changes. I have to send one to my police chief in Plymouth. I have to send one to the police chief in Duxbury, and I have to send one to Chelsea, Massachusetts, the Firearms Record Bureau up in Chelsea, to tell them that I've moved. You have to do it return receipt, registered mail, to prove that you did it. But why? On my license, nowhere does it say license to carry firearms in Plymouth, Massachusetts only.
Right.
It says license to carry firearms in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I shouldn't have to tell anybody I moved from one town to the next. When I go to renew my license in the next town, I just put my new address. I'm still a citizen of the state. I still have a legal gun license. And I would like to know what pinhead up on Bacon Hill invented this law, because I'd like him to tell me how many crimes has this law prevented. And
0. He
would come back with 0 because it hasn't prevented any. Here's what they're hoping. They know, and you have a 30-day window to tell them, or you lose your license and it's a $10,000 fine. Now, why in the world would I need to tell them? Well, they know that if you make a mistake like this, they get to steal $10,000 from you. And I do mean steal. It's theft, okay? You have things on your mind, you're doing things, you're in the middle of a move, maybe you're pregnant, maybe your house burned down, you had to move, who knows? You have a lot of things going on, and if you break that 30-day window, they're going to fine you $10,000 and take your gun license. It's a win-win for them. They get to steal the money from you, because you work for a living, they know they can, and they get to take back a license that they didn't want to give you in the first place. How's that a win-win?
It's ridiculous. I always tell people, if I have a class that's got a few people in it, if I've got 6 or 7 people in it, I will often say that the only other people that have to notify the police when they move are sex offenders. And then I look at one of the guys and I say, you're not on the same list, but you're at the same level. And then I look at one of the guys and say, you only have to do it once.
That's a great analogy. I'm going to start using that.
Yeah, it's the same. It's not the same list, but we're on the same level as sex offenders, which is ridiculous.
Absolutely, it's crazy. So people will people will have a hard time with that change of address notification form sometimes, and they'll get in touch with me all in a panic.
Right.
And it's like, just fill them out, send them out, and they don't have address police going door to door to find out when you move, do they?
No, they don't.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. So, you started writing the book. You started writing stuff around 2007. When did you finally decide to put it in a book, and how long did that take?
Well, I didn't decide to put it in a book till about a year and a half ago. A little over a year and a half ago, when another guy from New Jersey named John Petrolino, who ended up being the editor of the book, he took my class. He was from New Jersey. No, he doesn't. He lives in New Jersey, but he wanted to take the mass class for the mass license. And here's the funny thing: I tried to talk him out of it.
Right, because it's $100 a year to have the license.
It's $100 a year for him to renew it, and And so by the time he gets it, 4 months have been burned up, and then it's good for 8 months.
I always tell people, I said, look, if you're a non-Massachusetts resident and you want to get a gun license, that's great. It's $100 a year, and your new hobby is to renew your license.
That's it.
And I always say you have to go to Chelsea. My line is Chelsea, where you need a gun.
Oh, jeez. So John took the class, even though I tried to talk him out of it, explained the hardships of it, and he said, I want to take it anyway, and he did.
God bless him.
And then he came up to me and he goes, hey, you have a lot of information on your website. Have you ever thought of putting it in a book? And I said, well, yes, but I don't know how to do it.
How do I do it? Yeah.
I have no idea, and I didn't. So he said, well, you know what? I have experience in that field. And he was also in he's in the Merchant Marines. I was in the Merchant Marines, so we had that in common. I liked the guy right away anyway. It's just another Merchant Mariner, and good guy. And so we got together on it, and I'll tell you what, it took us 1 year, a lot of work to get that thing formatted correctly, to go through Amazon's hoops to get them to accept it, to make sure we had all the laws and the citations to the laws correct, because we can't afford to speak in opinions. We have to speak in facts.
Oh, absolutely.
And so when you write a book, you open yourself up for criticism, but what I found so far is there has been no criticism, because we are very meticulous about our facts. And if somebody were to tell us we did something wrong in there, well, nobody has, because we made sure we didn't. Right. But it's a very informative book. If you have a gun license in Massachusetts, even if you took a class already, there may be things in there that you never heard.
You share a couple of stories in there about some students that you've had and things that have happened, which I thought were good, because then it's a little bit, I don't want to say more real life, but these are real examples of things.
Yeah, people, I've had I've had 6 people who, during the class, when I'm talking about there's no such thing as an unloaded firearm, and that's the proper mindset to have with all firearms. And if you have that proper mindset, you won't do anything foolish with a firearm, because the first mistake you make could be somebody else's last breath on earth.
Exactly.
Well, when I'm talking about that aspect of it, I've had people throughout the course of years while I give the class, different classes, different people, don't know each other, put their hand up and tell me a personal story of somebody they knew that were actually killed because of so-called unloaded firearm. And the main theme that goes through all these stories is, I thought it was unloaded.
Right.
When in actuality it wasn't, but in actuality it should never be unloaded. It's always loaded, and that's the way you should always think of it. And if these people over the course of years had thought that way, there would be people still alive.
Right. Because
they wouldn't have done anything foolish with the firearm. I wish I could wave a magic wand and make people think that they're always loaded all the time. But
yeah, it's the whole Spider-Man thing with great response. Oh God, I'm going to screw it up. With great power comes great responsibility.
Or when you take the responsibility of gun ownership, and I'm glad I got into firearms long before they were trendy or fad. I got into firearms long before that. And I've learned a lot from a lot of people over the years. Smoke-filled, cigar-filled gun ranges. And I don't know, I've had an interesting life growing up around firearms. The NRA has been a big part of my life, even though I don't always agree with everything the NRA does. I'm not lockstep with the NRA.
I'm with you. My attitude is, I don't mean to cut you off, my attitude with the NRA is this. When you're in a relationship with someone, you don't agree with everything they say, with everything you do, but you still work it out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I see the NRA. Like, I don't agree with everything that they're doing, but you still, it's the biggest program group. Everyone should be a member.
One of the core firearm safety rules when I was a little kid And in that junior rifle handbook I have, the one with my picture on it, along with the rest of the kids, their number one core safety rule, number one, was treat all firearms as if they're loaded at all times. Well, somewhere along the line, the NRA changed that. They decided to make sure you point a firearm in a safe direction at all times is their number one rule. Well, you know what? I disagree with it. I think if you treat it like it's loaded at all times, you damn well better point it in a safe direction at all times.
Yeah.
That should come naturally in step with they're all loaded.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I didn't agree with that change, but that, you know, it's a minor change, but to me it's a little more than minor. I like the idea that they're all loaded all the time, being that it puts much more of a serious aspect on the firearm that is in your hands. If they're loaded at all times, then you will absolutely make sure it's not sweeping anyone.
Totally.
Sweeping meaning barrel over your body.
Yeah, pointing at something you don't want to shoot.
Right.
Absolutely. All right, tell us more about your book and how we can find you. I know that we should be close where we need to be. How can people find you? You got a Facebook page? You said you got a website?
I have a website, which is massfirearmsafety.com. I will go all over the state giving the class, but you just have to follow the guidelines on my website. So you can go to Mark Shean and Son, Firearm Safety, and I'll come up on Google number one. You'll be the first thing that pops up. As far as the book goes, if you go to Amazon and you just put Gun Sense, author Mark Shean, S-H-E-A-N, is how you spell the last name. You'll find me right there. I've got a lot of good reviews in there on the book from people. And you can buy it there. It's cheap. It's like $15.
$15, I think.
$15 for the book and $10 if you want Kindle. It's very cheap, but there's an awful lot of information in there that, you know, could get you out of a world of hurt. Because if you tell a police officer, and you're supposed to know the firearms law with a gun license, if you tell a police officer, "Oh, I didn't know that," he's going to have zero sympathy for you. Oh yeah. And guess who's going to have even less sympathy than that is the judge. Yeah, so you don't want to be in a fix of saying, "I didn't know that."
I didn't know. Yeah,
and I take away the "I didn't know that" in this book.
Yeah, it's a good book. It's got a lot of good stuff in it.
It's good for anywhere where people are that have guns. Be a great hunting camp book. I just gave a class in October to a bunch of doctors. Really? They asked me to come up to Grafton, Vermont, and give a firearm safety class. One of the doctors owns this big piece of property up there. I mean, he shoots on the property. He has 13 of his friends come up every 6 months. They come up and they have a good time, let their hair down, I guess. Cool. And so they asked me if I'd come up. Now, they said they had licenses, but he was concerned because some of his friends weren't the safest people with guns in their hands, even though they're doctors. Right. So if somebody got hurt, you wouldn't have to go far to look for a doctor, I guess. But I said, sure, I'll come up, and I did. I gave them a class. I was up there all day. I showed them, I gave them some drills, some firearm drills, because they were all loaded to the hilt, these guys. It is Vermont. It was in Vermont, and you should have seen some of the stuff they had. You know, doctors, they can afford it.
They shooting is an expensive hobby.
Yeah, and they didn't have any problem spending money on shooting. Yeah, with the guns and Kimbers all over the place. Kimbers, maybe some Class 3 fun. Trigicon sights, and I was like, holy smokes. Nice. But anyway, I gave them some drills that they had never done or thought of with handguns, and they had a ball. That's cool. So I actually did some live fire with them. That sounds like a lot of fun. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. They were a great group. I hope they see this because I did enjoy myself. You got to share it with them. Yeah, I did enjoy myself, and wouldn't mind coming back to do some more shooting. I could give them some different drills they could shoot.
Very cool.
If they invite me back up. But that was a first for me, 13 doctors. I've given classes anywhere from one person all the way up to 56.
Wow, that's cool.
I gave a class of 56 up in Saugus. Yeah, that was a 2-part thing. It was 20.
Yeah.
It was like 23 in each class over 2 days.
Wow, that's cool.
And that was for hospital security.
For hospital security.
Yeah, they all worked in a hospital.
Gotcha.
So,
All right, so we got all your stuff. You got a Facebook page? Did you mention that?
oh, the Facebook page. Yeah, it's Mark Shean, but it's M-A-R-C. I just misspell it a little bit. It's M-A-R-C S-H-E-E-H-A-N, which is how a lot of people spell Shean. That's not how I spell my name, being Mark, M-A-R-K-S-H-E-A-N. The only difference is the S-H-E-A-N is the Protestant spelling. The S-H-E-E-H-A-N is the Catholic spelling.
So let me see if I get
From
this straight.
Ireland.
So Mark Shean's your name, and Mark Shean is also your pen name.
Yes.
But they're spelled differently. That's funny.
On the book, it's spelled correctly.
Okay, gotcha.
It's spelled
S-H-E-A-N.
Yeah.
All right, very cool. Listen, Mark, thank you so much for being on the show. We're going to put links to all this stuff so people can find your website and your Facebook page, and they get an order for the book. And I also, while we are here finishing up, I want you guys to check out the Self-Defense Radio Network. It's sdrn.us.com. It's all of your pro freedom podcasts in one place. I also want you to go to asphaliadesigns.com, A-S-F-A-L-E-I-A designs.com, and check them out. They're going to be one of our sponsors, which we greatly appreciate having them. And we will catch you guys soon. Make sure you check out all the Riding Shotgun on the Facebook and on YouTube and Gunstreamer and all of the podcast outlets.
There's one more thing.
Oh, go ahead.
The book is carried at 3 other gun shops in Massachusetts.
Oh, cool.
One is Brophy's Fine Firearms over in Middleborough. The other one is Outback Arms over in Plimpton. And there's one down on the Cape in Hyannis called The Gun Works in Hyannis. They all carry my book also.
All right, cool. So we'll put some links in for those guys so they can check it out as well. And we will see you guys next time on Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Thanks a lot.